every day, work for it. I stand alone, can't get much higher. It's in my bones, love's true survivor. I stand alone, I keep on rising up to the throne. I won't stop fighting, 'cause I stand alone.
The name of our company is B&W Concrete Services, and we're very proud of the people that are employed here. We're very proud of the product we put out and the reputation we've built. What we do in this industry is we pour primarily residential foundations and flat work to homes. So the company was started in 1973 by my father, a partner and a laborer. Today it has grown and expanded, and we employ over 100 employees. And we have two divisions. We have a foundation and a flat work division. Majority of our company, about 70% of it, is made up of the foundation division, which pours the residential and commercial foundations. The other side is the flat work division, which pours streets and basement floors and garage floors. There's two different skill sets, two completely different things you can do with concrete, but combined they make us a much better company as a whole and allow me as the owner to market to many more customers and really create work for both sides, foundations and flat work. From the foundation side of our business, our niche is primarily residential foundations, and depending on our customer and who's hired us, if it's a custom or a production type homeowner, the sizes of the foundation can vary drastically, but the typical foundation that we're going to get on can be poured in 3 days. We're in one day, we pour the footing, the next day we pour the walls, the next day we clean it up and we're out of there. And we do market that to our customers because time is money, and the sooner they can get that house closed, the more money that they're making on their end. To do that though, you've got to be able to be efficient, and we have got to have efficient employees. We believe in training from within and promoting from within. On any given day on the foundation side, we've got 13 crews running. So we'll have 13 different jobs going, and you could be on any one of those. And any facet of the job that I'm about to explain. So after the builder calls, the hole will be excavated. Our riding boss will go out and check to make sure that the hole is ready for us. At that point, the next day he'll schedule a foreman and usually a crew of 3 to 4 other men. That foreman will bring to the job with him enough lumber, 2x6s primarily, to form up the next phase of the job. Once the hole is dug, when everybody gets there, generally the crew will start unloading the trailer and the materials necessary to form up the footing, while the foreman and the carpenter will lay the job out per the blueprints provided by our customer. Once the job is laid up, you'll typically see a string run around the entire hole, and that string represents the outside dimensions of our foundation wall. From there, the entire crew will take 2x6s, and you'll see a 2x6 lined on each side of that string. Again, that string represents the outside of our wall, and that wall should be centered on a footing. A typical footing is just a flat surface to set our forms on. It's usually 24 inches wide by 8 inches thick, and it may or may not have steel in it depending on the plans that we are provided. Once the boards are in the hole's laid out, everybody gets to work with hammers and nails and boards essentially, and boards the footing up. And you'll see it's usually the same width all the way around. Once it is boarded up, it has got to be a certain depth, whatever depth the plans call for. The foreman will help you with that. It's either 8 or 10 inches. Usually you got about 2 to 4 inches to dig out all the way around inside those boards to allot for that 8 inches once the footing's bored up. So usually the crew at that point, the entire crew will get started in digging. And you'll dig out all the way around, and you'll backfill on the outside of the boards, meaning the spoils from the inside of the dig you'll put on the outside of the footing boards, so when you pour it, it will allow for the concrete not to spill out from under those boards, because sometimes the holes can be very unlevel. Once it's all dug, if it requires rebar, usually the entire crew will be asked to lay out and install the rebar inside the footing boards, sometimes before the concrete's placed, and sometimes we'll float it in after. Sometimes the job is pumped. I think yesterday the job we saw was pumped. Often it is not. If we have access to get concrete trucks all the way around the hole, pay attention, because you can learn from the guys that are maneuvering those trucks around and how they maneuver. because it does take a little bit of getting used to as to what to tell those drivers to do, because they're looking to us to direct them once they get off the road. But if we have access to pour out of trucks, we'll pour out of trucks and save our customer, the builders, the expense of the pump truck. But whether it be out of a pump or whether it be out of trucks, essentially everybody jumps in there and does what they have to do to get concrete everywhere that it needs to be placed. Sometimes that can require dragging with shovels. If you can only get so far down the back of a hole and concrete's got to go 60 feet down this footing and you can only reach 20 feet, the entire crew will get together and they'll drag the concrete by hand down to where it needs to go. This can be hard work, and there's no sugarcoating that, but it's very rewarding work. When you stand back and you look at what you've built when you're done, it's pretty rewarding. After the footing's poured, drug, all the concrete is where it needs to be. You'll typically see one of the carpenters and or the laborers, and you can learn this pretty quick. But they drag a 2x4 down the center of that footing, and they create a notch in the center of that footing called a keyway. And what that keyway does is it sits in the center of the wall. So once we return the next day and they lay the blue lines out for the walls, you'll see that keyway is going to hit right in the center of that wall. And that keyway prevents the wall from shifting right to left once it gets some lateral pressure on it. After it's formed, then it's smoothed off to the top. The foreman will have already shot and leveled where he wants the benchmark or the top of that footing to sit, which will make the top of his wall sit where he wants it to sit. But once the concrete's poured and floated off to the top of the boards, the keyway is put in, it's left to set up. Now, while you have been doing that and the concrete's been being poured, the riding boss has already dispatched what is a boom truck. The boom truck carries all of our concrete panels, and it's a process, and there's a lot of coordination and teamwork involved to get this job complete. But when that boom truck gets there, you need to be very aware, because that is heavy equipment, and we're very much into safety, and we all work to support our families, but at the end of the day, we all want to go home to our families. So just be aware of your surroundings, where you're walking, where you're stepping, and certainly what's being unloaded in the hole around you. They'll unload the forms in the hole. Once the forms are unloaded, the foreman will instruct the crew, usually give them what's called a filler sheet. And what a filler sheet is, the forms that we have come in 3-foot sections. A filler sheet are smaller dimensions, 12 inches, 18 inches. The other size forms that we need to build whatever the plans show. The guys will go around, first of all, they'll pre-spray all the panels with oil, and so when the concrete's poured on them, it doesn't stick. It releases easier. But so it'd be a combination of spraying the panels with oil, taking them out of the baskets, and taking them and setting them around the hole almost where they're going to be set, but setting up against the bank all the way around the hole, all the way around the blue lines. Once the forms, and we call this stocking out. So we're stocking the hole out. We're getting ready for the next step, which is setting the foundation per the filler sheet that the foreman has put together. There's carpenters and there's laborers on a job. You'll start as a laborer. I hope that you're a big sponge and you're absorbing all the information from these guys that you can, because the quicker you learn, the easier it makes the job on everybody there. But there's carpenters and laborers and the foreman is a carpenter, but he's the man in charge.
I'm a foreman here at B&W.
So you're the foreman. Okay, so when you say foreman, what does that mean? What is your responsibility?
I'm in charge of the crew.
How many folks normally work for you on the crew?
I usually have 4 or 5.
Okay, and how difficult or how do you get them to work together?
It's more, you got to get people all to work together. It's more personalities and stuff, and you put everybody on tasks so they work together good.
So what exactly do you do on a job site? So if I'm coming, I'm a new guy on a job, tell me, how would you get me involved to feel comfortable on the job site to work?
I'd get you out there, and I'd have you kind of follow somebody around, show you what to do, how to start out and do things the way things are supposed to be done.
So when that happened, what is that? Break the ice and they feel comfortable and feel like they're part of the team?
Yeah, you try to get them to feel comfortable and fit in, let everybody, so they don't feel left out. And try to teach them as they go, not yell at them, but teach them how to do things.
You was telling me that you've been in 4 generations?
Yeah. Ever since my great-grandfather, he did it, and my great-grandfather, and my father, and so on. And my kids will probably do it too.
So that's something that you wanted to do as a kid, watching your father, your grandfather, and everyone doing it?
Yep, it's been a good life for my family. It'd be a good life for me too.
So how rewarding is it to come and do something like this, and particularly, you know, have people working with you as a team?
It's rewarding to know that you're going to have something that's going to stand there the test of time. You can come back in 30, 40 years and it's something you've done. It's usually still going to be standing there unless they tore it down to build something bigger.
So what would be the advice to young folks trying to get in this industry? What would you tell them about work ethic and the workload?
You have to have a good work ethic. Come out there and want to work. It's hard physical work. It's going to be on you. You're going to go home. You're going to be tired. But it's rewarding to you after you get into it. It ain't so bad, and it's a good job to have.
And how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for 15 years.
Wow. Now, how is it working for B&W?
B&W is a great company to work for. It's been one of the best foundation companies that I've ever worked for.
All right, I really appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
He's instructing the whole crew what to do, and typically everybody jumps in there and does whatever needs to be done to get the job done. That will make up the first day. Obviously, some footings are much bigger, and we've been on some jobs for 6 months, but all you got to do is come ready to work and listen to the foreman, and he will tell the crew what to do. But that's usually the first step of a basic residential foundation on the footing. Now the next day we go into the walls. So everybody gets there. The foreman and the carpenter first thing will go out and lay out blue lines if he's not done it the day before. If you see those blue lines represent the outside of the wall, all the way around the foundation. So that will be the outside of the wall. The first thing you'll do is you'll lay rebar on the footing after the blue lines are down. As the guys get the panels up and they start setting, they can just pick that rebar up and set it on the bottom row of ties, and they can just keep setting. After you lay the rebar, with aluminum panels you usually set in twos, and depending on the crew size there may be somebody that needs you to help set with them. And you don't need to know anything, you just need to ask a lot of questions, and if you don't know something, don't hesitate to ask questions. People are eager to teach, and you need to be a sponge. You need to pick up as much as you can, as quick as you can, and the best way to do that is to ask questions. If there's pairs setting everywhere and nobody needs your help setting, try to ask them what they need. A lot of times they'll need pieces of hardware and various things while they're setting that you can provide for them. And if all else fails, ask the foreman what you can do to help. I'm sure he will find something on that job somewhere. There's often column pads, which are pads in the center of the basement that don't get poured with the footing for whatever reason. The goal is to get them poured with the footing, but inside the interior of a basement, there's usually 3 foot by 3 foot pads, and they can vary in dimensions, but those pads support beams, which support columns, which support the floor joists of the first floor. So every basement will have them, but usually that's a good time if those aren't dug yet and you see everybody's busy and you don't know what to do, grab a shovel, jump in there and start digging column pads. The foreman will usually have them laid out and spray painted, but always ask him and verify, and that's certainly a way to still work and pass a little bit of time until they're ready for the next phase of the pour. So once the walls start to get up and they start to get a little bit more complete, you can start to go around and put up hardware on the inside of the foundation and walk boards. These hardware and walk boards, the foreman will have buckets laying around, and all you'll need to do is ask them, and they will instruct you how to install them. Walk boards act as an area for the foreman to walk on, and also a whaler board which keeps your walls straight. After the walk boards are up, the corners are on, meaning the outside corners are on every corner. We're ready to pour. The foreman will have already calculated the concrete. It should be there if the job's timed right. If not, you may have a little bit of wait time. We are a union shop. We always have a break middle of the morning, usually around 10 o'clock for 15 minutes, and we always have a lunch. The foreman will have ordered the concrete, and again, if you can either pour it out of trucks or you can use a pump truck. There's 2 different ways to pour there, but really the goal is to work as a team, and that's probably a little bit more to explain here, whether you're pumping it or pouring out of trucks, but you want to try to get concrete as close to its final resting place as possible out of that truck. So if you're pumping, usually there's a guy on a hose, and right behind it there's a guy with the shovel, And everybody is watching when you first start to make sure that that hose is all the way down as close to the footing as you can get, and then they're gradually bringing up higher as that concrete comes up. And that hose, as it gets to the top, sometimes you'll pour in lifts, but on a typical foundation, we just pour, and once it gets to the top, you'll go all the way around and top out the top of the walls. But everybody works to keep the rebar, to keep the concrete from hitting the rebar, because when the concrete and the aggregates in the concrete hit the rebar, it can cause some separation from the cement and the sand and the components of the concrete, and cause some problems. So we all do our best to keep it from doing that. And it can cause some aesthetic issues. Again, these are all things you'll pick up very quickly the first few pours, and the guys will explain to you on the job, and you shouldn't worry too much about those details. Really, it's about coming in with the right attitude, knowing it's hard work, and understanding that it's very rewarding and a very good way to support your family. So we've gone through the footing, we've gone through the walls. Step 3 is the cleanup, and really what that boils down to is removing all the concrete forms from the job. We scrape them, we clean the forms, we have got to maintain our equipment. Some of our competitors in the industry do not, and we try to separate ourselves, because when we pull our forms off the walls, you'll see it leaves a very smooth looking aesthetic look, and that's what we sell to our customers. So we do everything, it's high dollar equipment, we do everything we can to maintain it, and I'm sure you'll hear that from the foreman and everybody on the crew, because we preach it to them. But we'll be pulling it off the wall, you'll scrape it, and essentially you'll pull every form off the wall and put it back in the baskets. The boom truck will be there, the boom truck will load the baskets, and you'll put all the hardware back in the buckets, you'll put all the lumber back on the trailer, all the fillers back on the trailer. The foreman will scrape the top of the walls, and we'll pick up any trash, anything that's left behind, like to make that foundation look as good as we can make it when we walk away. One piece of advice that I would give all new hires is you got to come in with the right attitude. You've got to know this is hard work, and I'll tell you, it's hard work, but it's rewarding work. And if you can stick through it long enough, even if you're out of shape, your body will adjust, it will become easier, and the more you learn, the quicker you learn, the easier it'll be on the whole crew, to where it's not as hard on you. But attitude is everything, and you've got to come in with the right mindset. Part of the right attitude is, if you don't know everything, to ask the right questions. You can easily hide. These jobs can sometimes be big, and by hide I mean look for ways that the foreman can't see you not working. If you want to advance quickly, ask a lot of questions, be a sponge, and you'll quickly see what jobs are less desirable. But if you want to move up quick and earn respect, jump in and do those jobs without being asked, and it'll turn some heads, and the crews will start to take you under the wing, because they'll realize that this guy's here to work, he's serious, and it's worth my time to teach him what I know. All right, I'd like to conclude by making a few points. B&W Concrete Services in review is a 45-year-old company, and we believe in taking care of our employees. We are a union shop, and that separates us from a lot of other people in the industry, in that it will provide to you insurance and pension, as well as a very, very good wage, which will allow you to support your family. We all have to work, but we can choose a good direction to support our family, and this has certainly provided me, this is Bella and this is George, a great means to support my family. It can do the same for you. This is not just a job, it can be a career, and we hope you give it a shot.